All right, good. So we'll start then. Um, all right, welcome to a conversation on the Common Toad podcast. Today we have the great privilege of talking to Rahima Mahmut. She is a singer based in London. She's originally from the area known as East Turkestan, also known as Xinjiang province. I think I got that right. And in addition to being a singer, she's also a translator and an interpreter. And crucially, today she is a Uyghur Muslim, and we're here to talk about the situation in East Turkestan with the Uyghur people and the Chinese government. So I think I have a sense that, so I'm calling from America, as I told you earlier before we started the conversation, and I think people have a sense of how there's some news items about the Chinese government rounding up Muslims in different places. I think Americans are a little bit more self-absorbed than usual this time of year because we have a big, crazy election coming up. So I think people, it's kind of right on the edge of their consciousness. And I'd like for you maybe to start by just explaining who you are, where you come from exactly, and how it is that you find yourself now living in the UK.
Thank you very much. My name is Rahima Mahmut, and I am originally from a city called Gholja, that is a northern part of East Turkestan, one of the most greenest part of the East Turkestan, because the East Turkestan, the towns are of oasis towns, because we are surrounded in where I come from is mountains, the Heavenly Mountains, and green grasslands. But in the south is more desert, so it's very different landscape. And where I come from is from the northern part of East Turkestan, and was born and brought up in a very large religious family. My father's sides are very religious background, and my mother's side musician, the musical background. So I was very privileged to born into a kind of very unique combination of a family where I was educated from very young age about the value of our religion, and also listening to the sound of Quran and sound of my mother singing, and my brothers playing music. So that is my background. And I studied from primary school in Chinese school. I actually chose to go to Chinese school. At that time, we didn't have to, we were not forced to go to Chinese school. So during my childhood, we had the freedom to choose whether we want to go to Uyghur school or have a Chinese education. So my entire education is in Chinese, from primary school until my university petrochemical engineering degree. And I left my country in 2000 after witnessing 1997, the Gholja massacre in my hometown. And that's how I ended up in the UK. And I have been living here for the last 20 years.
For the last 20 years, and the next question to me is, so you left after a massacre that occurred in 97. Were you an activist there to some extent? Were you involved in politics?
Well, if I was openly activist, I wouldn't be sitting here and talking to you.
Maybe a different kind of activist, a secret kind.
It's hidden. Everything is, you cannot even express your view. There's 1989, you must know the very famous student democratic movement in Beijing, and the June 4th massacre in Tiananmen. that I'm sure that worldwide remember. That is maybe the one of the worst massacre that happened in China in the most recent history. I was one of the students involved in participating the students' movement in 1989. But I left the square on the 2nd of June because my university was in Dalian, 21 hours train journey from Beijing, because we were repeatedly warned that the military is going to come in if we don't empty the square, that the tanks will come in to suppress the protest. And we left on the 2nd of June. So that is my very first involvement, I would say, in a kind of activism. But I was lucky. I got away, not being persecuted for my involvement, because the amount of students that involved was just too large, too many, tens of thousands. So some students were lucky enough, left unpunished. I was one of them. So, but since I returned to my country, I was in the mainland China, then East Turkestan in 1992. And the time I was there from the very first day when I arrived in Urumqi from Dalian, and up until I left China in 2000, I experienced a series of discrimination from, starting that couldn't find a job despite completing one of the top university, and petrochemical engineering at that time was one of the most desirable subject. And but I couldn't find a job in the capital, for example. Then I had to just go to take a job, in another town. So that was one of the kind of, how can I say, the experience that most Uyghurs that, we face in everyday life. Whether you speak the language or not, whether you are an intellectual or you are highly educated, or you are just an ordinary citizen, you just being Uyghur, even that time, the situation was quite difficult.
Yeah. And you said once 1997 rolled around, you saw the Gulja massacre, and that was kind of the moment where you thought, okay, I've had enough. I need to find another place to be. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, since in mid. Sorry, is okay.
I can see.
Yeah, my phone somehow the phone had an app just.
Oh, okay. I can see you
disappeared.
just fine.
Yeah. So let me just restart all again. From the early 90s, after I returned from the university, the situation started to become deteriorate. When I was born, if I go back to my childhood, I know the mosques were closed, and I know my parents, and when they prayed, they often warned us not to tell people when we go outside, not to tell people. And later I learned that was the latter year of the cultural revolution. So during the Cultural Revolution, during the Mao's time, the religions were banned throughout China. And then after Mao died from the 80s, the new leadership, they kind of relaxed all the rules. So re-implemented the religious freedom, and people had much better freedom than before. And that is when in 80s we had several protests demanding a better freedom, freedom of speech and democracy, etc. And then after 1989, students' movement cracked down, the new leadership that then took control of China, and the situation throughout China, it kind of started downfall. The situation became worse. The human rights situation was already started very, very difficult for people like myself, who was very outspoken. So we became very, very careful then, because I could see anybody who a little bit outspoken or expressed the view in public, they were disappeared or arrested. So I have been very, very careful, but up 1997, when I was visiting my mother, on that day when the massacre happened, because I was working in a town called Maitar in Uyghur, or in Chinese Dushanzi. It's about 12 hours a drive from my hometown of Gulja. And so that was on the 5th of February, one of the very, very sad day for the Uyghurs in Gulja. And so a peaceful protest was crashed by the military. The Chinese government deployed military and killed over 100 on that day. Then mass arrest, followed by mass execution, and the disappearance of mainly young male in Gulja. So I could see the situation was not getting any better since 1989, from the time that I have involved in the students' democratic movement, and the whole hope as a very young student who had such a big dream and hope that change is going to come in China, after seeing so much changes happened in Soviet Union, that the former Soviet Union, etc. And we thought that change will come to China as well. But I couldn't see any kind of improvement. It was just one incident after another, one disaster after another. I was teaching, and even in the college, that the Uyghur teachers, we could feel that we were being watched. And in the classes, every time when I went to teach, and I would see a note on my desk from a student from the front desk, just warn me that there's someone is listening the lesson. So yeah, so even that during 96, 97, those until I left in 2000, it was suffocating. It was really, really kind of suffocating. And especially especially since 1997, I would say the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, are very, I would say, seems like terrified about religion. And they also ordered the teachers to watch out any students if they are observing Ramadan or if they go to mosque, even send teachers to stand outside the mosque on Friday, just to check if any students going to Friday prayers. Yeah. And I knew there was some really, really good students were thrown out from the college because they were caught praying. That was in late 90s. Yeah. And so I could see the situation is really, really changing. It was like going back to cultural revolution. And I thought if I could find any opportunity, then I shouldn't stay. And I was lucky. I got a student visa as a master's student to do a master's degree in the UK. and I came in 2000. That's how I left my country. And my son was 5 years old then. He joined me 2 years later. Yeah.
So you're talking in the year 2000, having a sense of things, even from the late 80s, not getting any better, but getting worse. And now we're sitting here in the year 2020. So the next question is, what is it like to live in Xinjiang today? And what do we know about what it's like to be a Uyghur in Xinjiang today?
Well, it's just heartbreaking. I cannot imagine how people are coping. And
Yeah.
I saw one video about a month ago, a very beautiful young teenager on TikTok, and she's speaking, smiling,
Oh,
said,
yeah.
if our religion were allowed us to suicide, imagine how many of us have done so.
Wow. Yeah.
I cried. I just couldn't. It made me so emotional. I just felt so. I cannot explain to you. It's very difficult to imagine the life there. I was involved in working for this film, Undercover China's Digital Gulag. I worked as consultant and interpreter translator, and this documentary won BAFTA this year as a current affair. And we managed to have an undercover filmmaker, a Chinese man, traveled to the region, and he secretly filmed some footage. And he, in the film, there is one Chinese official, and obviously he didn't know that he is speaking to an undercover filmmaker, a journalist. And so he said, during the interview, he said everything here is a bit too extreme now. So the Uyghurs, anytime they can be approached, that when the police approach them and ask them to hand over their phone, and even if they say why, they can just take them away. So when the reporter asked him, don't you think the Uyghurs feel that their human rights are being violated? And this Chinese official said, it's not about human rights violation. They just don't have human rights. This is the whole word admission. So imagine, living in that kind of situation, that you go out, you have to pass through every 200 meter, you have to pass through a checkpoint. You have to be watched constantly, and you have a Chinese cadre come and live in your home, and you cannot say no. And I'm not talking about the camps, up to 3 million
This is
people.
just daily life. This is outside of the camps.
Just daily life. At the moment, for example, at the moment, we know it has been over 40 days, the lockdown, Urumqi and Kashgar, several other cities, after they found some coronavirus cases, the place was locked down. And I could see some video footage that is coming out from the region. The neighborhood committee and the police and the officials literally going to people's home, sealing their homes from outside so they couldn't go out. And we are very, very concerned, for example, now, if they cannot go to do any shopping, and if they don't get any help from other people, and the people can die from starvation. And the people just couldn't. And I saw one also video footage about 2 weeks ago. I think there was a man standing just at the window, his window, screaming he wants to die. So this is the situation, and this regime is driving Uyghurs to kind of suicidal.
And as a person who has a substantially large family back in the country, you know too that even answering a foreign phone call could mean that you're taken away. Is that right? When was the last time that you've talked to any of your family back there?
Well, absolutely. The last conversation I had with my eldest brother was in January the 3rd, 2017. After 2 months, I couldn't get hold of anyone. And then finally, when I tried a whole day calling my brother, and then he finally answered his phone. And when I asked why no one is answering my phone, he said they did the right thing. And then he just said, we leave you in God's hands. Leave us in God's hand too. That was the message, the last conversation that I had with my brother. And I don't know, since I want to call them so much. I want to know what's happened, but it's just impossible.
Yeah,
It's
I can't even begin to imagine it. And especially when I start to think that your story is multiplied many, many thousands of times, maybe millions of times, all over. And there, it seems like every Uyghur person who is gotten outside of the country has some kind of story like this and knows more than one friend or family member who's just behind this curtain. I mean, and thinking about what's actually going on, you just talked about what's going on outside of the camps. Inside of the camps, we're starting to, it seems to get a little bit more information. You just retweeted a week or two ago an article from the Diplomat, I think it was, and it was that Uyghur teacher who was teaching Chinese language, and that one was especially chilling. That was one of the worst ones that I had read, where she talked about getting assigned to teach some of these camps, and she very quickly realized you're talking about people are tend to a cell, nothing to sleep on, no windows, coming into the classrooms in chains, everything designed to humiliate and degrade, and uh, injections, pills, unexplained injections, things like this. And I think she even said that she was a teacher, but she was one of the few Uyghur teachers, right? And she even had a forced IUD at one point. So just extremely invasive birth control measures. Um, so one of the most important things I think about your story is that you're an interpreter. So have you managed to do some interpreting for people who have been in the camps and have gotten out? And do you have have you heard similar experiences like that?
very consistent. It's just so strikingly similar stories from almost all. I interviewed most of the camp survivors. Majorities are female women. They are, for different age. And Gulbahar Jalalova, for example, she is currently living in Turkey, and she was also from Kazakhstan, and she was taken in and spent almost a year in 3 different camps. And she described exactly same things that when she said when the first day when she was arrested and taken to the cell, she screamed because she said it was so crowded and everyone was chained and shackled, and the just seeing the horror of so many women in such a state, and she screamed. And Mihrigul Tursun was living in the US, who testified in the Congress, and also described about 9 deaths that she witnessed during her detention. There are a lot of women, young women, taken out for questioning and never returned. And Sairagul, who was also camp teacher, a Kazakh national, she fled to Kazakhstan and then now living in Sweden. Her book was published about a month ago, and she speaks almost exactly the same situation. And she said, in the hell-like place, you are not even allowed to cry or smile, and you are watched 24 hours, and you are not allowed to speak to one another, despite in a very crowded cell. People are not allowed to support one another. People are punished for passing their own steambun to another inmate. And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I mean, I come across many ex-prisoners who served a prison sentence even before these camp networks started. And there was a lady who's now living in Germany, Ruqya. The interview lasted 11 and a half hours, and 11 and a half hours she talked about that from the time she was arrested and until she was out. That torture, that is just sometimes I even surprise myself as to how I am.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dealing,
yeah.
How I am managing, how is it possible that I am managing this? And then I say, well, God is giving me this strength and power, because I feel that I have this mission to, God has a reason that for me to decide to come to this country, in 2000. And for the last 20 years, I have never stopped telling people stories about what is happening. But I have never, ever imagined that, in the 21st century, the situation of the Uyghurs now, it is like what the Jewish people experienced,
Yeah.
75 years ago. It's just so similar when you look at the detail of the development from the start of how they demoralize the people as a whole, and trying to portray them as dirty, as backward, and as dangerous, and then using that to justify this unbelievable cruelty against children, women, and elderly people. Every time when I read anything about children or elderly people, I cannot control myself.
Yes. No, it's it's you would think it's the sign of a person with a heart that they wouldn't be able to control themselves and wouldn't be able to imagine that kind of cruelty. I mean, when you talk about this, when you tell your story, to me, there's two big kind of questions looming over it. The first one has to do with China, and the second one has to do with the rest of us, I guess. So with China, it strikes me that they're trying to erase an entire culture, right? It's a huge undertaking. It's probably expensive. There's enormous risk involved, one would think, in the international community. Why is it that the Chinese government sees this as being worth this amount of effort? Why do they want to do this so much?
Well, it is very difficult to understand it from a very normal person's point of view. It's extremely difficult to understand. It's just like how you can understand Hitler, you know.
Yeah.
It's this very twisted mindset, and it's a twisted patriotism, nationalism, superior, because the CCP, the Chinese, they feel that they are superior. They can do whatever they want. If they didn't like someone or people as whole. Of course, there are many reasons behind that. Of course, that cannot justify their actions. First of all, my country, East Turkestan, is very, very rich in resources. Petrol, gas, cotton, 84% of China's cotton come from my region. Gold, jade, minerals, and you name it. And secondly, so because of this wealth, they want to have complete control.
Yeah.
Over the years, because of the very rapid increase of the population, the Chinese population, before they implemented the one-child policy in China, the population reached a billion. So for that reason, they need a space to relocate their own population. So that was another reason that for them, the East Turkestan, or they call it Xinjiang, is a place, some solution for this massive population. So they have been giving incentives and bringing in the population. So in 1949, when the Chinese CCP Communist Party took over the region, 4 to 5% Chinese population, the rest were the Uyghur and other local Muslims, Turkic Muslims. And now, if you look at it, some cities are 50%. So it's almost like half.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they have this fear. They always worry that the Uyghurs are gonna rebel. They want their independence. So can easily accuse Uyghurs even if they express their dissatisfaction about the policies, for example, discriminative policies, inequality, etc. They can very easily accuse them as separatists, as separatists. We Uyghurs have a expression, "O'g'orning yuragi pok." So, if you are a thief, if you steal something, that your heart never stops jumping. You live in fear.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the way that we say why they are so paranoid is that they know this land didn't belong to them. They are the outsiders. They came and took the land, took the resources, and they're trying to be the owner of the land. But they know the people, the real owners, are there, and they always have this kind of paranoia and the fear that they are going to one day rebel and take control, even though the Chinese the Chinese government is so powerful in the world, but yet they still have that fear. Even though Uyghurs, we don't have any militants, or there is no the Uyghurs have no power whatsoever, although they accusing Uyghurs as terrorists and all this, but we don't have one organized such organizations. For example, even the Chinese government, they cannot name such organization. So I would say there is also one of the important claim, or the reason again, is a stability. As I said, because the fear of this rebel and fear of the Uyghurs will stand up and against this very severe persecution. But at the same time, there's a one belt, one road. This Xi Jinping's dream, China. It starts from the heart of the Silk Road. That is it starts from East Turkestan, the project, and for him, the stability of the region is so vital, and they want to completely paralyzed the Uyghurs. So the Uyghurs have no, in mentally and physically, in every way, they cannot rebel, and only then they feel, yeah, the place is now stable, it's
Yeah.
peaceful. Then we can do whatever we want. But regardless of whatever reason, what they are doing there, it is a genocide, and there is no reason you can justify a genocide against such a peaceful, beautiful human being.
And that brings me to the next question, which is, so when I said before we started recording, I first heard of you when you did an online panel discussion with some of your Jewish allies who have, I guess, a lot of Jewish people have been stepping up in calling out this activity in China. Um, and also the broadcaster in London, Majid Nawaz is his name. And he said something during that conversation, which I wrote down when I first heard it because it kind of struck me. And I'll read it for you now. He says, "This is why I tell you it's become so difficult to have this conversation, not because someone's holding a gun to our heads, but because everyone knows the open secret. Everyone knows that this is almost impossible to pull back from, because we have become so blindly dependent on enslaved labor in China by the Communist Party so that we can maintain our lifestyles." So I said the first question was about China, the second one's about the rest of us. And this is the uncomfortable question for those of us in the United States and elsewhere, Europe, who think like, okay, this is a terrible thing that's happening, but this is something that's happening on the other side of the world. What can we do about it? So my question to you is a direct question. Um, are we benefiting directly from slave labor in China?
Obvious, it is very obvious. I mean, sadly, yes. I mean, maybe some of the products I have bought might come from, slave labor from my own people. And it is not a secret that Chinese government often used prisoners to work long hours, 15, 16, 17 hours. I know some ex-prisoners, even before this camp network started, that any person, after they receive their sentence, then they are sent to the camps, labor camps. They are all these big large prisons, they have factories. I remember hearing that one of my friends' brother, who served over 12 years in prison, and he used to make toys, and that they worked 15 hours and with very little food, and the deprivation of food and sleep, and then just exploit you, without giving you a penny to work. And now, of course, after detaining so many millions of Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities, it is one of the things is to humiliate, to torture, to break your spirit, to make you become so like a second class, or make you become, what can I say? There were people told me that after taking some of those drugs, some of those pills, that after taking that, you lost even feeling towards your family. Even this one lady said she even couldn't remember her 5-year-old daughter. He said she was a cutest at the time when she was arrested, and these pills can make you completely numb. Wow. And then forcing these people to work non-stop with very little food, providing very little food. And so this is happening at this 21st century in such large scale. And ASPI, the report, Australian Institute has published a report in February and naming all these big brands, including Nike and Apple, H&M, and many big brands, up to 80 brands. Actually, their supply chains involved in slave labor. And during the lockdown in March, we've seen TikTok videos of the young Uyghur youth. They just filmed themselves. They were assembled in thousands and hundreds of them wearing the same uniform and under the pretext of poverty elevation program. And when the region is locked down and the people didn't go to work, and the Uyghurs were taken to these factories and to continue the workforce. So it's very inhuman. And of course, I believe because 1 in 5 shirts apparently are actually from the region, and was it 20% of the world cotton come from the region. 84% of the cotton from China come from the region. And not only just cotton products, everything that we are using today, there might have the many slave labors are involved. Yes, we are. I think we are benefiting from this very evil situation.
And so people who are watching this and horrifying, but and it's something that everybody knows. We in general we know that a lot of the products we get from other parts of the world are made from either something like slave labor or just straightforwardly slave labor. It's something that we kind of all have in our minds. But I feel like until you put a face and a story to that, it's something that you can kind of push off to the side. And so now that somebody's watching this and they're kind of reckoning with that, the next question, hopefully, is what do we do what's actually an effective way of dealing with this? What will the CCP respond to? Will they respond to political pressure? Will they respond to economic pressure? How does an average citizen start to try to turn the ship around? What's the most effective way of doing that? Do you have a sense of that yet, or not?
Well, I economic power, actually, it's the economic power that made China become so arrogant and feel that they are the top of the world, that they can use the money to bribe, to do what they want. For example, now the Arab countries, for example, all the third world countries, Africa is completely in the hands of China. So the reason a lot of resolutions, for example, cannot pass in the UN because of the control, the humiliation and manipulating the world order. It's all because of money, and the money, within the last 30 years, China became so powerful economically because of this cheap labor, because of this. Although and then maybe 10 years ago, people didn't talk about slave labor, but even just the ordinary people, when you compare even the Chinese people, the whole working in factories, they were just surviving, in order to make the country so powerful and wealthy. So the economic power, I believe, is one of the main reason. That's why I think weakening the economy and any ordinary person to rebel and to say no to these cheap products, I think that will make a huge difference, because in the end, it's a consumer who can make the difference. And it's the people who can make the difference. But sadly, a lot of people, they don't think that one person can make any difference.
Yes.
But if everyone think that, well, made in China could be from, made forced labor. Okay, let me pay $2 more or $5 more from somewhere else. That actually do make difference. I believe that can make difference.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll post too on the page some of those articles and studies that have come out which show the different supply chains from the parent companies and from where they get them from and the regions and everything. So people will be able to look a little more closely at where their purchases, where their money's going, and who they're supporting. I wonder at the end of this, how much of your day, your average day, is spent thinking about this problem?
I was on holiday in Crete recently. I thought I could have some rest and just get away from this really sad situation, because I have been working for the last 3 years. Of my work is very much about talking, translating, and the only time that give me some kind of joy is my rehearsals and my music. Other than that, is mostly just sad situation. I take satisfaction. I'll satisfy only when I feel if any kind of project that we have planned that being successful, or if we launch a campaign, that is a sort of things that give me some kind of real happiness. Otherwise, it's just a very sad situation. And during my holiday, I couldn't I cannot switch off. When I retweeted that article, I was on my holiday, and after reading it, I wish I never read it in the end. I said, why did I read the article? But because of my work, I have to update myself, with the latest information, what is happening, and I cannot just help it. So it's difficult. But God gives the strength as well. We say when He gave you the trauma, the sadness, the situation, at the same time, it gives you sabr, the patience. Yeah. So I think you just have to get on with it and live with it, and still try to sing and still dance and still smile, and everything will become like part of your daily life.
And although the Uyghur people are victims of this terrible campaign, I hate to just dwell on this, even though it's an emergency. In some ways, I don't want to end without talking a little bit about the kind of the dignity of the people and the culture and the things that you love about your homeland and the people that you come from. So I want to talk, just before we go, a little bit about that. You say you're a singer. You sing traditional Uyghur songs, right? I wonder if you just imagine back to the days of when you were younger in East Turkestan, and you think about the culture that you come from. What are some of the best? What do you imagine, basically? What do you imagine? What's the cultural center of your people?
The Uyghurs are, even by the Chinese, they always say "Nenga Shanwu," means they can sing well and they're good at dance. So the Uyghurs, it is in the blood. Also because of our cultural tradition, no parties. You don't feel you are in a party if you didn't dance, if you didn't hear the live music.
Yeah.
So it's very, very different from the kind of pub culture that like here they go to pub and they drink, just talk. There's no, but for us, any kind of gatherings, people will carry their guitar or dutar or something that every party ended up in a kind of live music. So among your friend 10, if you have 10 friends, you will find at least one or two who play music or who sing. It's like I said, from like my background, when we have like 3-4 families come together just to visit one another, and then we all had musicians among 3-4 musicians, and then there's so many singers. So this is a kind of maybe it's in the genes, I don't know. And also the culture of Gulja, where I come from, it's that the whole region knows is a very well known for its comedy and for its humor. And even from childhood, the children already brought up in that environment. So any party in Gulja particularly, I don't know any other part of East Turkestan, but in Gulja is whenever there is a gathering, especially for male gatherings or some mix, the singers and the comedians are there. Yeah.
What kind of comedy? What kind of comedy are we talking about? Is it stand-up comedy? Is it storytelling, or what kind of?
Any jokes people can say, just make out of fun of every situation, and they try to find a smile and try to laugh. Try to find a way to make things easy for themselves. And that is the kind of culture that we have. And also a lot of comedians got into trouble as well, because of, even though they use a kind of very careful metaphor to avoid and then try to tell the story, sometimes they get targeted as well. And also for the Uyghurs, we all have nicknames. For example, everyone they make a nickname out of, from if you are a beard person, or if you have a big nose, or if you have a small eyes, or if you had a two, that people don't mind. They don't mind to call names. It's like part of culture, and they're happy just to make fun of one another and laugh about it. It's very easy going. We don't take things so seriously, and especially men are like that. So that is a kind of a culture that we brought up. We're very different from the Chinese people. We always feel they are very serious. They are very very careful people. But for the Uyghurs, they culturally, from regardless of what kind of situation. I remember translating this book, The Land Drenched in Tears, and so there is a scene of the Suyungul Chanship. It's her memoir, this Tatar woman. So after she arrived the prison, and she was trying to watch what people are doing in the courtyard, there are men working, doing cleaning, and so there is one episode there, and one guy called the other one, said, hey, come here, let's let's make this place shiny, and maybe we will be praised on the next prison journal, for example. But the way how it said it in Uyghur is just so funny. It's like everyone in prison, you are there, you are forced laborer, the intellectuals, and these intellectuals, and they make such jokes. And there was a one, like, she was also trying to find writings on the door that was left from previous prisoners, and there are some of the writings there. It was just hilarious, and she laughed so much. And we are talking about people who locked up in these very dark cells, and they still found a way to write some kind of things that make people laugh. So this is the spirit of the Uyghur people. So for me, whenever people ask my childhood, it just lit up my, I just, become so happy, because I just bring back all that kind of very happy childhood of music, songs, and uh, I was brought up in a very strict, very disciplined family, but with the love and the culture. And I can say that I don't see that in many places. And I always feel very lucky. And what I miss most when I think about my childhood, I lived in a village for 11 years since I was born. My parents were in city when I was born, and that year in 1997, 1970, it's the year that the whole Uyghurs who didn't have their job with the government, they were banished, forcibly removed from city to live in village. So that's how. So that the time when I was born, we moved to a village, and then when I was 11, we moved back to the city because my father wanted us to have better education, and in the village the schools are not good enough. So anyway, that 11 years of the time that, especially my primary school years in village, I miss that a lot, because not only the landscape, the apple orchards, the roses, and the river, and also because my father's business is apple. He used to just buy the whole orchard and then collect the apple and sell it in winter time. Although business were even then is not, you are very free to do business, but he always managed in order to give a better life for 9, 10 children. So anyway, my summer holidays, all my summer holidays we spent in apple orchards.
Wow.
So we always it's a beautiful place where we play hide and seek, and also when we collect apples, we always sang. I would sing one folk song on the, standing on this apple tree, collecting apple. And then when I finish, and my cousin would start with the next song, and then the third one would come from the other trees. And
That's wonderful. Yeah,
that time we had these phones. We had all these the smartphones that we could take videos of those scenes.
yes.
And yeah, even when I was in university, every year I used to go back only once a year, because it was like 1 week journey from Dalian to my hometown, almost. And so 5 weeks holiday, spent almost 2 weeks traveling and 3 weeks home. So every time, because my second brother lives in town, we live in the center of city. So anytime when I visited him, he would just organize a party in the orchard, and then his music band and his friends would come, and that is just like a proper concert. You just see a proper concert with kebabs and food. Everyone just it's a beautiful life, and despite the terrible oppression that we faced, terrible discrimination, we faced. But when we are together, the community is always very, very close, and we support one another, and we take comfort from one another. So that is a kind of community spirit that I miss a lot. I mean, people, we say that Uyghurs, why they still like mentally still so healthy despite, I mean, I don't know now, even when I was there, you know, despite so much unfair situation that you face in your daily life, is because of this community spirit, and also because of our religion that we practice. We always believe that it's a test, that we need to be patient, we need to learn to cope with any difficult situation, and we need to be calm. We shouldn't react. So that is a kind of training from childhood that we you know, I mean, from my own experience, that's how we were brought up. And so music is one of the most important part, and poetry.
Villages. I want
Villages.
to ask about the poetry. That's right. What's Uyghur poetry like?
Oh my goodness. Well, I remember Harvard University president actually quoted Abdurrahim Ötkür's poem when he visited Peking University last year, and he actually even mentioned that his mother survived a concentration camp. No. And then he closed his speech with the poem by Abdurrahim Ötkur. And he said he's one of the most prominent, best poets in our time. And Abdurrahim Ötkur actually spent almost 20 years of his life in prison. A lot of his poems actually he wrote when he was in prison. For example, one of his poem were a lot of his poem made into song lyrics, and one that I used to sing in some of my concerts called "My Pen is Broken." So it's my pen is broken, my fragile heart is in pain. Both my hands and my legs are paralyzed. What do I have left in me to please my precious nation? I was born in one of the darkest nights. So it's the poem actually to reflect the situation, the tragedy. And I would like to just, if you allow me, find that quote that
please, that would be good. Yeah, that sounds good.
Stars, I think. Okay, because when I wrote my recent op-ed for the Newsweek, I quoted that. So this is what he said, the speech of the Harvard president, Lawrence Bacow, at Peking University in March 2019, where he told the audience that his mother had survived the Nazi concentration camp in Auschwitz, and closed his speech with a verse from a poem by the late Abdurrahim Ötkur, a renowned Uyghur poet who spent almost 20 years of his life in prison, who Bacow called one of China's great modern poets. So this is a poem that he quoted. A long life's road, I have always sought truth. In the search for verity, thought was always my guide. My heart yearned without end for a chance of expression, and longed to find the words of meaning and grace. Come, my friends, let our dialogue joyfully begin.
Well, Rahima, I could talk to you for hours and hours, I think, but I don't think we can improve on that as a place to, let's say, a place to pause for now. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure anybody watching feels the same. Thank you for giving us your time today. Um, if we get to talk again, I hope it's under improved circumstances, and know that people all over the world uh, admire you and are watching you and are willing to help. And just thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.